All right. So when I wouldn't say started my journey, when my consistent journey started, back in June, a former coworker of mine, she wanted to start her own private practice. Eventually, her goal was to transition to solely having her own business working for herself. So she knew that I had made the decision to learn to teach myself how to make websites. So she was like, you should make my website. And like at first, I was like, well, I don't even know how to make a website yet. She was like, that's fine. She was like, I don't need the website for a couple months. Like, make it, as you go, learn as you go, basically. And so that's what I did. So, like, I use Udemy courses for HTML, CSS, and like Odin Project and all that. However, as I would learn something, I would add that one little section to her website. Mind you, this was not like the final version. If anyone has seen my Twitter, the pinned tweet that I have about about finishing my 100 days of code journey, I have a thread about building in public, and I think I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. It'll show the very first version of that website to, at the time, the most recent version, and you can see just like how I improved in just those little 100 days. So that freelance project pretty much started it off. I didn't actually finish that website until, I want to say, like the end of the year, just because like some of it I was just waiting for information, and like it kind of was one of those projects that was kind of like on the back burner at times. So like I said, the Odin project had projects built in as well. So I think I skipped the Battleship project. And besides that, I think that's the only project that I ended up skipping. Just because that was around like Jest Test and like that whole section. That just wasn't like, it wasn't working for me. Like I would need a video. I would need another way to learn testing. Like I can't read it just reading this little article. So Odin projects. And then once I got to JavaScript, I started making just random projects just to practice. Like, for example, my very first project on my portfolio it's called Talk to Do. Mind you, don't sue me, but it is a to-do list. However, it's a cool to-do list because it's voice activated. I think I just watched some random YouTube video on the speech synthesis API, and then I think it's called web speech API. And I think I started off in CodePen. Like that's how you know, like this was never intended to be an actual project. I started off in CodePen of all things, and I watched like 2 or 3 videos by random people all on the same topic, and I just started experimenting. And like I was like, you know what? I wonder, is there a way that you could like say something and make that call a function, like make it do something? And so I kept fiddling with it, and then like I got it to do something, and I was like, wait a minute. And so once I did that, like I just kept asking, like, oh, I wonder, can it do this? I wonder, can it do this? And like that curiosity, like that pretty much lit the flame to the point that my future projects coming after that, like that's how they happened. Curiosity, just wondering, could I do it? And I just tried it, and eventually I figured it out. For the most part, some stuff I did get stuck on. Some projects I never actually completed, but they still served its purpose because at the time, like I practiced and I learned something new from it, so it wasn't a waste. But yeah, if you look on my GitHub, I know I have in the 50s, and maybe I may have even reached 60. I can't remember. In between 50 and 60 GitHub repositories, and that's just on GitHub. I have projects from, of course, like the free code camp projects to get your responsive web design certification. I'm trying to think, are they even on my GitHub? They may be. Any code alongs that I did, for the most part, I tried not to post them on my GitHub because I wanted my GitHub to solely be projects I did myself. I may have like 1 or 2 from John Smuggler's HTML CSS course, but besides that, I'm almost certain that everything on my Sorry, I got cut off. I ran out of time. I have a 5-minute minimum. So if I run out of time, the video just stops recording. But yeah, projects are the number one most important thing in your journey. Like, people focus on the roadmap, and the projects are what get it. And like, I don't necessarily mean the projects on your portfolio. I just mean building projects, period. Building projects from scratch. In my opinion, any project, any code along from YouTube, Udemy, does not count as a project because you're guided. You're watching someone like basically tell you what to type. You usually don't run into any errors because it's pre-recorded, so they cut out anything that didn't go right for the purpose to make the video shorter. So like, one thing about video courses, and people, the term tutorial hell, a reason that's a thing is because tutorials give you false confidence. So like, you always are going to understand for the most part when you're watching the video. Like, they may be giving the explanations to go along with it, and like, it's going to make all the sense in the world. And you're like, yeah, I built this Amazon clone, I built this Netflix clone, like I built all these great projects. But then when someone asks you, all right, make a to-do list from scratch, like, you have no idea where to start. And one of the reasons is, in my opinion, mind you, this whole video is my opinion, is because a course that's project-based, especially a course where you just build one giant project, you learn topics in the context of that particular project. And the problem with this is you're not able to apply it to anything else but that project. So like, say, I don't know, I'm trying to give an example. Say you had to sort something. Say you got something pulled from an API, and then you had to sort the search results or something. You understand for that particular project, but like, then you may not be able to do that exact same thing for your own project because the context around it is different. It may not be an exact replica because you needed to do some more extra functionality. So in a way, tutorials like handicap you. A lot of things I've noticed is people will wait until they watch an entire course, then they want to make a project. Or some people go even worse. They'll watch not one, not two, but 3 whole Udemy courses, like the full stack, maybe even. Then they'll decide to build a project. And to be honest with you, by the time you watch your first Udemy course from beginning to end, I guarantee you've probably forgotten 75% of it. Like, that's why you see some people saying, oh, well, I took this course, but like, I still don't really know what I'm doing. I have to keep going back. It's because you never learned it. Like, your brain only has the capacity to remember a small amount of things, and like, it's use it or lose it, basically. So you learn it, but you don't apply it. It goes in one ear, right out the other. And I didn't actually learn this until I got to like the tail end of JavaScript, but I really applied it when I got to React. If anybody followed me, gosh, this was November, the beginning of December. When I started learning React, I'd make like, I think the playlist is actually called Learning React on my YouTube, but I had these little mini videos where I would make like a shopping cart or just like these little itty bitty things. And like, that really made me remember React a whole lot faster. Like, I'm much more proficient in React than I'd say I am in vanilla JavaScript because of the way that I learned. I finally figured out like what works best for me. But yeah, back to tutorial hell. I heard some people say that, oh, well, I don't know enough to build a project. The irony is the learning comes from building projects. What good would it do you to build a project if you already know how to build it? Like, the whole point is building something you have no idea how to do it. Just start along the way, figure out how to do one little piece, learn and implement it. All right, now go to the next little piece, learn and implement, and keep going before you know it, you have a complete project. For example, I learned to not look at a project as a whole, to look at it as a sum of components. So, for example, somebody asked you to build Facebook. Of course, most beginners would be like, well, I have no idea where to start. Like, how do you build Facebook? Like, that's crazy. That's too much for me. And like, I'd ask them, do you know how to build a nav bar? Do you know how to build a button? Do you know how to build a form? Do you know how to create an input? Do you know how to build a sidebar? Like, I bet you answered yes to one of those, at least one of those. Like, that's a start to building Facebook. Like, all websites are a bunch of components arranged on a page with styling, be it CSS, Tailwind, whatever thing of choice that you use. But yeah, that's all it is. And you really don't realize this until you start learning React, because the whole idea of React is to break things up into reusable components so that they can be used again. You literally can pop this component into this page, pop it into this page, and it's there. So yeah, I definitely say build projects immediately. Like, even when you're in HTML, just practice making a form, like playing with all the different HTML elements. Like, to this day, I'm still learning about HTML elements that don't make like the top 10 lists that people like to make. For example, detail summary. I didn't know like that's a built-in accordion, like out of the box. I didn't learn that till, I don't know, 6 months into my journey. So, but yeah, but for me, my journey was full of projects. Like, that's how I learned. That's how I got better. And for the Visions of Hope website, that was the freelance. I actually kept like screenshots of the very first website and like each rendition. I've probably redone that website now 4 times. So like, it's cool just to see like, all right, here's where I started when I had no idea what I was doing. And now here's where I am now. Am I an expert? No, but I'm much better than I was when I started. So like, yeah, there it goes. But definitely projects. Like, I cannot stress this enough. You will not really learn what you're doing until you build a project. And when I say project, I mean you open VS Code or Sublime Text, whatever you use, start from scratch, turn your tutorial off, turn your video off, close that book, and figure it out. Like, that's what I did.